Welcome back to the Vault Cast. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 2. My name is Daniel Crary, your intrepid host. I'm joined by our producer, Kyle Foucher, and as always, our illustrious leader, editor-in-chief of Vault Comics, Adrian Wassel.
So good to be back.
Episode 2. Now, for this episode, we have an interview with Ben Hennessy, the artist of Godfell. Fastly, one of my favorite artists. I think everybody who sees Ben's work falls in love with Ben's work and joins what I've been calling the Benaissance, this new era of Ben Hennessy in independent comics. So, Adrian, what can people expect out of this conversation with Ben and this interview?
I think you can expect to meet one of the coolest artists working in comics today. Somebody who just has a great personality, fantastic accent, and the art to match. I love that you coined the phrase the Benaissance, Daniel. It's just too perfect. So I got to meet Ben by way of Chris Sebela, his co-creator on Godfell. I had not seen Ben's work prior to the Godfell pitch coming in, and attached to the pitch were just a few pieces of concept art. And you'll hear from Ben, but Ben has a background in animation and in doing concept and character design. And when I saw those first concept pieces of Zanzi, I was like, if this guy can draw sequentials at all, now granted, this was before I knew that he had a background in animation, like he's going to be a rock star. He's going to just blow up in comics. And sure enough, he did. And watching Ben just kind of graduate to a whole new level of excellence through the process with Godfell and find confidence in himself and his work was fantastic. So I'm just really excited for everybody to get to meet Ben, someone who poured his heart and soul into creating one of my favorite comics of all time, and just such a rich and intricate and super cool world. Godfell is packed full of details, visual details that will just really enrich the reading experience. And so much of that is Ben and how much care he puts into his work. So yeah, I'm excited for everybody else to join the Benaissance.
Oh man, I can't wait till you guys hear us talking about the chimeras, all the mashup animals that he invented for this. I know this is a bold claim, but he puts Avatar: The Last Airbender to shame with his mashup. He
really
animals.
Does.
So good. All right, sit down, buckle up. Here comes episode 2 of the Vaultcast featuring Ben Hennessy. Let the Benaissance begin. We are joined today by the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ben Hennessy, artist extraordinaire, your new favorite artist. Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. Great to talk to you guys again. I was just watching the first episode earlier on, and I was admiring your bookshelf behind you there, Dan. I think we have a very similar collection.
I wish I could take credit for all the books, but a lot of them do match.
Calvin Hobbes, you got to have that too.
Those deluxe ones are not cheap. If you couldn't tell by Ben's ease of conversation, in addition to being a celebrated comic book artist and animator and many other things, father, you have your own podcast. Tell us a little bit about the Odd Pods and how that got started.
It got started because my mate Dave Hendrick and I got a book with Scout Comics, and in order to kind of publicize our book, we kind of thought like a podcast might be the way to do it, and it kind of took off before the book is even ready. So Topple will just have been finished when this comes out, so we'll actually have our first live podcast at Topple.
Congratulations!
Thanks very much. We're delighted. It should be a good one. We got Ram V and Rachel Stott to come join us, and yeah, it should just be a really fun one. These two comic book greats talking about their favorite apocalypses.
I was going to say you're slumming it a little bit on guests there, but other than that, it sounds pretty
The podcast is just a means to kind of help promote a book that we need to promote. Like, it's a fun one. It's pretty lighthearted. It's just bringing on people that we like talking to and ask them what their favorite apocalypse is after they've told us a bit about themselves. We did one kind of deep dive on The Last of Us. Ooh, that was fun. Nice. I think we'll go back to doing more things like that because that was probably pretty popular and an easy one for me and Dave to kind of put together as well.
Man, a podcast you put together explicitly to promote books. I can't imagine what such a thing would be like. I know,
right? I wonder where you guys got the idea.
How dare you? I've been pitching this for a while. Ben, obviously, I'm delighted to have you here and so glad that I know you. But the reason I know you is because of your work at Vault, specifically the series Godfell, which is wrapping up 2 days after this episode goes live, November 15th, the final double-sized finale. Now that you've gone through it, is there a sense of relief? Is there a sense of sadness? How are you feeling about the book?
My newest Hennessy, she's 4 months old now, 4 and a bit. Like, we were just trying to get the book book finished before she arrived. So there was a bit of relief when we got it finished before that happened, because then God knows what could have happened a few weeks after that. I would have been very late. And then the sadness kind of kicked on afterwards when I started seeing Vittorio's last coloured pages come in and stuff. And maybe even a bit before that when I got Chris's final script and this issue come together for, I think, like 56 pages. Like, I can't wait for the final issue to come out now. I really do. And I've been saying it on all the socials. It is our best work as a team. All the Godfell team hit all the right heights at the right times. We peaked just when we needed to. And I'm really proud of that stuff. I can't wait. I've been sitting on so many ideas with things that happen. There's a lot of stuff that goes on between Zanzi and Neth. And then there's a huge event happening in the kind of the finale that I don't want to spoil for anyone, but I just can't wait to talk about it. I can't wait to show the pages. I've kind of been showing like panels here and there, or one abstract kind of page that might not lead to anything story-wise. You might not pick up on it, but you know they're going on a journey deeper into this massive giant cadaver god. So yeah, I can't wait till it's all out there so I can safely talk about more of it and the process. And we mentioned my podcast earlier on, the Ozpod. We had Nate Gooden on that, and he mentioned about my face has been particularly good. He likes how I draw faces.
High praise.
Yeah, I thought so, because I mean, like, he's one of the best living, you know? I rate his stuff really highly. I don't think anyone does a page as exciting as Nate's, and even when it's just dialogue, there's so much going on and it's so engaging. So when he was talking about my faces, I was delighted.
Well, especially faces. Like, that is something that not only does he personally excel at and prides himself on, but he does judge other work based on that, because it is
cool.
You're acting on the page. Like, if your faces aren't conveying it, right? Like, what are you doing here? I'm glad he said that to you, because that is not only a high compliment, but a sincere compliment that I don't think he would give out lightly.
No, it came across as sincere anyway. I hope it was, because I'm putting on like my cover sheet for my CV and everything. So, you know, Nate Gooden said this about my work.
If anyone on here listening to this show or watching, because we're on video too, has somehow failed to pick up Godfell thus far, what's the pitch for Godfell? In your own words, how do you describe the story of Godfell to folks?
A giant god falls from the sky and lands in the world of Kerathim. As the god impacts with the earth, there's this huge like natural disaster, kind of an earthal tidal wave across a continent. It's almost like a Pangea. It just seems to affect all kinds of cultures across this one giant continent. And the fallout is people who are at war want to lay claim to this body. It could be used for their own personal whatever the hell they want. Other people are mining it, selling off resources. Other people choose to live in it. Death cults worship it, and then they take up residence. And our heroes, one of them wants to go home, the other one's looking for a travel buddy, and they're pure companions by chance. They wouldn't have chosen to go on this journey together, and they end up having to travel through the foot of the god all the way out to the head. And like, this god is huge. It's absolutely colossal. Like, they're quite a while traveling inside this behemoth, and all kinds of dangers, new, unexpected, some familiar. Neth, who is a kind of a sidekick-ish character, kind of comes in later on in issue 1. Zanzi, who's this absolute berserker. Zanzi's used to fighting in war, so like taking on the hordes inside the giant god's body isn't anything kind of new or indifferent or off-putting to her, but it is to Neth, and Neth tries to sneak around these things. So you have the loud and proud meets the sneaky rogue and how they get along together. It's a lot of fun. Chris wrote a great script. I think the dialogue between the two is great, and I don't know about you, but like, I'm pretty nitpicky about how stories evolve. Instead of people telling you how you should feel, you should naturally feel for these people and empathize with them as they go on. And I think the way Chris has paced it out over the issues, you really feel that, you know, you want these guys to succeed and you don't want harm to come their way, as opposed to feeling like you're supposed to feel like, oh no, they're in trouble, I'm supposed to worry about them now. But I'm really proud of it. I'm really, really proud of it. I can't wait till the last installment comes out now.
You should be proud. It's a pretty incredible book.
You mentioned the final issue, and I think it might be my favorite issue, like, of the year.
Oh, cool.
There's a panel I screenshot. It like needs to be a print. Like, it's that great. Which I won't spoil, but there's a lot of blood, like mass amount of blood. But I guess with that, what is your favorite? Is it the final issue? Is it the first issue? Is there a favorite page? Like, what is like your proud moment out of all of it?
There's a lot that I'm really happy with, but like, I think the bit you're talking about, we won't spoil, is it a particular move that we're talking about, Kyle, that results in an ending of sorts?
It is a colliding, I would say.
That's about right, yeah. That's up there. That page is up there for me, because all my work is done digitally. I was thinking about doing these kind of portfolio packs. I've seen Alvin Lee do them before when he was working on Street Fighter, and you know, he had prints of his pencils on a certain number of pages that were his favorite. You know, he brought them to cons and sold those. So I'm thinking about doing something similar because my work is digital. I don't have any traditional parts for this. So I might do a production pack of sorts, and that page in particular is going to be there. But there's a couple in those last 2 issues that I'd like to use. Like the 5th issue, there's a huge moment between Zanzi and Neth. And you're kind of at that point of, oh no, what are they doing? You know? And I got to play a lot on like things I've learned in animation workshops and, you know, expressions, because I'm not like a trained actor, but I know that they tend to reference Paul Ekman's 7 emotions. Have you guys seen these before? Yeah, it would have been in the shows like Light to Me and stuff. There's 7 universal ones you can kind of use, and I kind of use them as a big Bible, because in animation I could have a number of seconds to display an emotion to an audience, but in comics I have a single panel, and I have to kind of do things with that panel to get a passage of time across to an audience properly. That can be used like panel size, panel borders, or massive amounts of dialogue, and that kind of stuff will always help make you feel like you're in a moment longer than some other ones. And I kind of find that if I use these Paul Ekman emotions, I'm getting an emotion across clearer without any ambiguity to anybody. It's easy to pick it up. And these 7 emotions, I think, like they cross all these cultural barriers, so like everyone everywhere understands these things. So like if you see bits like where Zanzi has her nose kind of snarled up, because Zanzi does a lot of that, I'm hitting contempt a lot. In that particular moment, like where you're going, oh no, Zanzi, and then what are you doing? Stop doing this. Like I got to play on a lot of action, and then immediately a lot of like character acting, everything I have in my toolkit, and it was a lot of fun. So that was a fun moment. And like all these moments have really happened in the last 2 issues. So I've just been like waiting for this to come out. I can't wait for it to come out. I can't wait for people to see it and tell me what they think of it. And hopefully they like it as much as I do. Guys, I've been sitting on it for a while now. I've been building it up going, oh, I really wanted to show that bit. Can't wait to show that. But just like yourself, Kyle, like my favorite moments are all in the last 2. But I think those moments are earned because of the build up to that last issue.
Well, I don't know about you, Kyle, but I'm having a great time talking to Ben Hennessy.
Ben Hennessy's my favorite person.
I was going to say he's my favorite person. God damn it. Well, in the spirit of him being your favorite person, I wanted to let you know that you can pre-order the complete edition of Godfell in trade paperback on the Vault website right now. And I know every episode I'm like, Kyle, you got to buy more books, but I want to help you out. So if you use code Benaissance, you'll get 30% off your pre-order.
It's very generous of you.
What can I say? I'm like Santa Claus, but for comic books and without any of the magical powers. So use code Benaissance and pre-order the complete edition of Godfell today. Now back to the show. In talking about the emotions and the action scenes and having those quiet character moments, having, you know, the intense bone crushing action of this book, what's your process like for approaching a scene? Like there's, you know, physical expression on a character is a clear intent, but do you set up goals for yourself around each scene, or how do you approach those individual motifs as you're coming upon them in the script?
I kind of fall back on my habit. So like getting trained in animation and then doing so much storyboarding, I actually record myself saying the dialogue.
Really?
Yeah. Like, so you see lots of like people using like photo reference. I do that too, but I kind of saw like there was a few pages in issue 1 that I thought like, I didn't quite get what I really wanted. I was close to it, but I didn't get it. And I'm a really big fan of Steven Silver, and he promotes making a video of yourself to get the correct pose, because you'll end up with an incorrect pose if you're just doing a still image of yourself trying to do the pose you think you should be in. Whereas if you act it out, you'll get a more natural pose. And like you're trying to keep people engaged in the story as much as you can. So if you're doing something that they'll empathize with and see as being more natural, you already are holding their attention more than, say, the person who's given their hands all of this when all they really wanted was just something like just a fingers together, a simple pose, something simple. And I found that I was overdoing it in a lot of my still images. And as soon as I was kind of acting out dialogues, I found my pose that came along a lot better. I would recommend, though, like if you're going to do this, close the blinds in your studio, because like your neighbors are going to think you're nuts. You're going to be sitting by that window for the rest of your day, and that neighbor will still see you there by the window. So you don't want them to be able to judge you and think you're nuts. And you know, then the men with white coats show up at your door and drag you away. And maybe they should. I don't know. These are just safety nets I put myself to make sure that I'm seen as a normal person when I leave the house. But I do think it betters the art by a country mile. I found that when I started doing that from issue 2 onwards, I didn't stop.
That's a tremendous amount of effort to go through for a script. Can you walk us through like what your typical day, what your typical process looks like with all this in mind?
Yeah, I'll probably go from the start. So like when I get Chris's script, I sit down in that chair there behind me and I start drawing on the script to try and get my ideas I have for a shot. Because when you're on your first read through, you'll think of something will pop up and you want to jot that down while it's in your head. And then afterwards, I'll go to my animation disc, which you'll see behind me, and I'll start drawing it on like little things on paper just to make sure that I'm getting it all down. And then I get to producing thumbnails for editors to approve. Dershing was great. Made some really good calls early on because there were things that I was doing coming from animation that I needed to do in comics. And there's one that I'm on the fence about. I don't like crossing the camera line. I mean, that's been bed into me for, I don't know, 20 years now or something. But like you can cross the camera line in comics if you're smart about it. So you just want the dialogue to read from top to bottom, left to right. So in order to keep that flow, you can cross the camera line. But I did my very best not to at all. Like I couldn't. I think I broke the rule once in one of the pages of Godfell, and like it annoys me that I shouldn't have done it.
Did that cause physical pain?
Yeah. So now it's like one of the things I refuse to do. I'll find a way to make sure there's room on the panel for the dialogue to flow the correct way without breaking that line. But it's things like that, you know, like you can't break the camera line in animation. They send this work back to you. You have to go again. And by the time you're kind of working animation, that's not a mistake you should be making even, you know, so you're probably not going to get another job with these guys if they see that. So it's a funny little change in two industries, considering like the goal is still the same thing. You still want to pictorially tell a story as clear as possible.
With that in mind, what does a typical day look like as far as like the hours? What does that take to go through that whole process? Like how long does it take you to like get a script read and thumbnailed on the page?
It probably takes a day and a bit. I think I was thumbnailing about 22 pages. So I think your average Godfell issue, like 2 as far as what was 5 is 26 pages. So then the following day I'd have 4 more to do. I'd then go and try and do a cover as well. And I'd send off a couple of thumbnails for covers. So I'd fill out like a block of 2 days to try and get that done. The other issues that were 30 obviously take a bit longer. And then like your regular day of drawing was, I kind of start by about 8, half 8, depending on how the kids are getting on with school and stuff and getting at the door, that kind of thing. Then I keep going till 5. It was a sharp 5 finish because I do the dinner. My wife works as well. If there was anything left over, I'd clock back in at around 9. But then I also have another book at the moment. So if I wasn't clocking back in to finish Godfell, I was clocking back in to work on that. And if I wasn't doing that, I was working on the podcast that we have. It's full days. I think I said this to Kyle briefly before. I emailed him at stupid o'clock Irish time one day and he said, wow, yeah, I can tell that you weren't messing when you said you do late nights. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Damn. That's a mad pace. Is it similar when you're doing animation work?
I worked on an Adult Swim show and I've actually recently been working on a Marvel show. I can't talk about what it is, but like the hours on that have been, funnily enough, easier than the preschool stuff.
Huh.
The preschool stuff, like you could be going fine and then you realize, oh, there's still a bunch more pages to get in before I have to hit this deadline on the following Friday or Monday or whatever. And then you probably have one late night before submission. But generally it's pretty good. I'm at animation a while, so I tend to pick what directors I get to work with. And luckily enough, sometimes they pick me. So, and like when I get to work with those guys, I tightly run show. I know I'm not going to be messed around. I know they want to get this across the line, not just as quick as I want to, but you know, as well as I want to do it. Like before I finished on Godfell, I think I started April last year or something. I had just finished on Pinkalicious and Peterific. The second part of the season that I was working on is only coming out these last few weeks.
Whoa.
Yeah, you know, it's a slow turnaround. You could be working on something, forget you worked on it, and then see it on TV. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. There's some differences because comics is a bit more instant. You know, you work on it, it kind of comes out a bit quicker.
Wow. Give us the origin story. How did you get into animation? How long have you been working in it?
Oh, I've been working in animation. I graduated in 2008, which was the Great Recession that we all loved and held dearly. So obviously it was a great time to go look for work because everyone was looking for work. We had a club. Actually, funny enough, we did actually set up a club. When we graduated in 2008, there was nothing for us. So we had to create an opportunity for us to get work. And when I say us, I mean like the people I was graduating with. There was only 5 of us. I went to college in Ballyfermot in Dublin. It's a really good animation college. A lot of the guys who worked in Sullivan Bluth are still teaching there. So you're getting great information from some really talented artists. When we left, we kind of went, oh, there's no way for us to go into a studio. They're not even accepting reels. Or what do we do? So we started an event. We called it Peg Bar because animators animate on a peg bar. You know those? Have you ever seen a sheet of animation paper where they have 2 dots and a slot in the middle?
Yeah.
The thing that goes on to is called a peg bar, and we were holding our event in a bar, so it made sense to us. What we did was, instead of a DJ, we had showreels and everyone's music on their showreels displayed in all the televisions around the pub. So if someone came down from a studio and they saw someone they thought was a talent and they needed to fill that kind of talent in this kind of position, they could pick from the crowd. That worked. That really worked for us, and that kind of grew into this thing where we'd host panels with guys from DNEG and guys from DreamWorks, and it was unreal. And what we kind of found was, like, really weirdly, like at the top of almost every animation studio, there's an Irish guy, like almost directly from Dublin or somewhere like that. It's nuts. And then they were all very keen to come over and do an animation talk when they came back to see their family or something. It did really well. It's still going today. It's doing different things now. I think it's like hosting college events, like for anyone into animation, as opposed to people trying to get into animation. But that was where I got my start. And kind of since there, I kind of started doing whatever I could for anybody, rotoscoping, all that kind of stuff, until eventually I managed to fool some guys into me storyboarding, and I've been doing it since, you know, with stints in character design and stints in backgrounds, and at the moment stints in kind of character layout. Yeah, it's been cool. I love it. I get to work with people I really admire, people I love working with. It's been cool, and I'm kind of happy to have my feet in both industries, you know, a little bit of animation, a bit of comics, so it's the body some good, I think.
Well, and you've obviously got a tremendous career that you've made for yourself, and you've spent all this time executing other people's visions and taking other people's worlds and storyboarding them out, and, you know, finding the truth in there and adding your own spin and obviously leaving your own fingerprints, then getting to, you know, work in independent comics and build your own worlds. Yeah. You must have felt pretty well equipped to dive in there after you'd been playing in everybody else's sandbox.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think we've talked about it before, Dan, like just how much world building myself and Chris did, and just coming up with what Kerathim looks like, the animals in Kerathim. If there was something I could have come up with, I think I came up with it. Like, I mean, there was no stone unturned. I grabbed that chance to design this world, and I choked at the living daylights out of it until I got as much out of it as I could. I just wanted to show that now that I have a moment to create this kind of world and something different, that I really wanted to give it everything I had. This is what I wanted for years and years. I got into animation because I wanted to do comics. There was no comics course. There was loads of animation courses. So
really?
Yeah, this animation stuff is pretty great, like this too. So it was great to kind of finally get into creating the story, and working with Chris was great because he's a multi-Eisner nominee, you know, like he didn't have to listen to any idea I had on the story. He could have said, yeah, shut up, you draw the pictures, just do the pictures that I'm running on the page here. But like, he was really open, and he was really great to work with. It was just brilliant. I mean, in terms of getting to world build with someone on my first go, like, I couldn't have asked for better. Everything just kind of came together at the right time. It was great.
Well, and even from being on this book, because Chris found you through Twitter, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, myself and Dave, the guy on the odds, the book for Scout, we were doing, like, we've been pitching for a while and we weren't getting anything, getting lots of maybes and lots of, oh yeah, this would fit in here. And then we find out that, oh, you know what, it's on indefinite hold or something. It's like, oh, great. So I was kind of like thinking, like, what are my chances? I respond to writers looking for artists all the time on Twitter. And I said, this will be the last time I do that. And he said something like, I'm looking for a guy on a fantasy book, a big fantasy fan. So I thought that he wouldn't get back to me. So I said something stupid like, passes portfolio on table and flutters eyelashes alluringly, or something stupid like that to him. Yeah. He got back and it worked out. So,
oh my God.
The trick is to almost give up, and then it happens. I think that's it. That's the lesson I took from that.
Yeah, that's what Harrison Ford said about making it as an actor. He moved out to LA with, you know, like 20 other friends, and they're like, why did you make it? And he's like, I'm the one who didn't leave. I'm the one who didn't give up. That's it. That's all it comes down to.
That's it. Just hang around long enough.
I didn't realize you were on the precipice of like throwing in the towel at that point.
If I was going to do comics, I was going to go back to maybe just doing bits with Dave, or I had my own one called Carrie and Rufus. And I was thinking I might go and do more of that and maybe try Kickstarter. I haven't come to that yet. I've been really happy with where this is going and where I'm going on the odds with Dave. And I'll look into the other stuff afterwards. At the moment, I'm too busy to look at or take on anything else. Probably jump on that stuff afterwards and see where this is going. But right now, like, even getting to do the covers for Barbaric that I've done, I mean, on a book that I love, you know, and I mean, again, like, you know, big Nathan Gooden fan, so to do covers on a book that he was involved in or a part of is just a blast, you know. So more of that, please. It's been great.
I mean, you're a busy man, which, you know, good problem to have. But I want to circle back to what you were talking about just a second ago go about world building and just like exercising the demons, leaving it all on the page, just throwing everything you have at this world. What was the process of world building like in the context of there's two kind of schools of thought in fantasy. You build world into character or character out into world, right? The character out into world is like a Neil Gaiman, world into character is like a Brandon Sanderson. What was that relationship like with the story and what was the world building process around it?
It was more the Neil Gaiman thing. It all came from Zanzi. It came from a Zoom chat I had with Chris where he described Zanzi as a force of nature. After I'd done a couple of iterations of her, we decided, yeah, this is the one, this is our force of nature. And then like she needed a steed in the first issue and I was drawing a horse and I thought the horse didn't resemble something worthy enough of a woman who was a force of nature. So then I looked up loads of horses. Like this is the world building. So I lost myself in breeds of horses and then how big they can get and what they can do. And then at one point I realized, oh, it doesn't have to be a horse. This is a fantasy world. This could be my own anything. Like what resembles Zanzi best? And I was looking at these Belgian blue bulls. You ever seen them?
No, I haven't.
They look like these bulls that are just being in the gym, just fucking lifting every weight in the world. They look massive.
Kyle, I need you to put in a picture of one of those right now.
They're not hard to find, you know, but like they're absolute tanks. They're massive units of bull. It's just ridiculous. And I kind of thought, oh, I'll use one of these guys. And, you know, a horse is kind of seen as the steed of a warrior of honor, that kind of stuff. So I wanted that in there, but I also needed something that was just like obviously bigger and heavier and meaner. That's what Zanzi is. So I kind of mixed this steed, bull, and I call them horribles because like that's what the people refer to these as. They're a steed of choice by the army and they're known to run over people. So they're known as horribles from everyone who's afraid of them, you know? And yeah, from there then it was like rat pigeons, it was cat monkeys, it was every kind of thing. And I realized, oh, like Avatar did this. I can really push this. There's a whole avenue for things here. I mean, when they get inside the god, there's this mix of a maggot or a larva or something. It looks weird. I went with that and a lamprey and something else. And like, it just spurred on this whole kind of different world that I think people can still relate to because it's still an animal you're kind of somewhat familiar with and you can see a resemblance to something you know, and they're kind of verisimilitude for the reader. And like, that's important because like if they're reading your book and their phone goes off and you've done something stupid, like your character's in the wrong pose or you have something that's just not really thought out design wise, they might not come back to you. You know, they might just put the book down and they might not come back after that issue. I kind of did my best to make sure that people could be invested from the first page to the last, even down to the designs. But it all came down to a conversation with Chris. He described Zanzi as a force of nature and I needed to find the force of nature for her. And then I needed to find a platypus buffalo for Neth and loads of stuff. I mean, the world was my oyster at that point. I had to figure it out and Chris seemed to be into it. I think Chris really liked the rat pigeons as well. It was good fun.
I mean, that's an amazing design process that is apparent on like page one. Like it's such efficient world building in a very tight amount of pages to know where we are, know the factions and see the type of world and the beasts that populate this. But obviously the story doesn't go anywhere without Zanzi and Neff. So what was character design like? I mean, obviously you talked about, you know, what Chris said of her being a force of nature. So where did that take you with her? And what did he say about Neff? And how did you start into the process of doing their character design?
Neth was really easy. He described her as a living ghost. So immediately I had this idea of giving her like white hair, you know, something like kind of weak and like, you know, her character, she'd been through quite a lot. She'd seen some stuff and I kind of wanted her to almost be the opposite of Zanzi. So Zanzi was this big force of nature. I kind of wanted her to be almost the polar opposite. So she's a lot smaller, she's a lot thinner, and she has her hair almost kind of down over her face for a lot of it. And the idea of that was I really wanted her to be almost hiding behind her hair. Like she didn't want to be seen. And as her character goes on, that changes. And I made a point of letting like Chris know, like from this point on, like Net no longer hides behind her hair. It's tied up into a ponytail and it's out of her face. I remember like Bryan Cranston talking about coming up with like his character for Breaking Bad, like Heisenberg, and why he wore glasses. And it's like his character can never really see the world clearly. And he always needed these things. It was one of those things that he just made a lot of sense for his character and helped him get into character. And I've heard other guys talk about it, but the way he kind of spelled it out landed with me in a way that I applied it to my designs. So what I wanted with Neth was, and I kind of knew from talking to Chris that she'd have a moment where she'd come out of this point where she wouldn't be hiding behind herself, that her hair would no longer be in her way anymore. She'd stand different. She could see the world clearly. She was happy to be seen in the world. She kind of grown into herself, I guess. So I kind of used that on her more so than anyone else. But thinking about all those kind of things, you'd be surprised what comes up in your head. Things you probably weren't aware you were taking in when you're listening to someone talk about their process. You're taking in something like osmosis or something. It just sinks in and then you can kind of apply these things to you and they can work or they can't work. work. Depends on the reader, really, if you've really managed to get them into what you've created, because they're the judge at the end of the day. They'll let you know if you've got it right or got it wrong. You just try to do as much as you can to try and get them into it, get them involved, get them believing in it.
Kyle, if you could be anywhere right now, just teleport and you're there, where would you want to be?
The center of the sun.
Not what I thought you were going to say. If I could be anywhere, I would love to be at Zeppelin Comics, our friends over in California who sent me this lovely shirt. Zeppelin Comics is owned and operated by our friends Dan and Natasha Curtis. Opening in 2015 in their hometown of Benicia, California, they offer a comic book store like no other. This clean, impeccably organized store is stocked with the latest releases from major publishers, but Zeppelin prides itself on carrying indie, small press, and self-published works from a huge variety of creators. Local creators, manga, tabletop and role-playing games, retro sodas, everything this store has to offer is on display proudly with some of the coolest branding and merch around, including my amazing shirt I'm wearing in this video with art by Rachel and Terry Dotson, plus so many others. Zeppelin is literally a certified gallery for Alex Ross art. It has to be seen to be believed. Going beyond all the typical retail trappings, Zeppelin is a force in their community. Zeppelin has hosted local Girl Scout troops as they start the process of their comics art badges with a meeting that kicks things off at Zeppelin. Zeppelin's also hosted a slew of local artists for showcases, live music events, drag story time, and they've even had Santa himself in the store for free visits with the kids. Zeppelin also works closely with Another Chapter, promoting literacy by providing free books to kids and families in need in the Solano County area. Zeppelin Comics helps Another Chapter achieve this by offering a nonprofit discount and donating comics and graphic novels to their efforts. They also work with local libraries on a variety of events and programming, including providing free books for Free Comic Book Day to over 25 libraries in their area. This year, Zeppelin was proud to open their second location in Napa. So whether you are looking for the latest issue of your favorite hero, your next indie favorite, or something self-published from local talent you'd never heard of before, Zeppelin has you covered. So stop in at either the Benicia location or up in Napa and speak to Natasha or Dan or any of their amazing and friendly staff. And be sure to tell them that Dan from Vault says hi.
Did your shirt teleport?
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never done a costume change in my life, Kyle. Stop accusing me of such things. Although our friends at Zeppelin did send me 2 different shirts because they're such swell people. It's interesting to hear you talk about planting the seeds for character change in their design from the beginning. Like thinking about your background in animation, especially if you're doing serialized children's animation or any sort of serialized stuff, the characters need to be constant. They have to remain the same and stay consistent throughout. So it's just cool to me that was part of your process, was like these people can end up totally different, more like a film or novel or any sort of like one-off story. Where they start and where they go, we can have totally different experiences here, but to have you plotting and arcing what the physical representations of those changes are going to be is not only amazing that you were thinking about that, but it speaks to a level of care you have with these characters and with this world. Like you've considered all these details, and obviously you're an incredible fantasy fan yourself, big fantasy fan. So when you were going through this process, were there other fantasy series or other fantasy stories that you looked to for influence that either checked some of these boxes or had a similar feel? I know you already mentioned Avatar: The Last Airbender with regards to the chimeras, the creatures, but were there any other things you were considering?
Probably everything I've ever kind of read. Probably robbed from Peter and then robbed from Paul. They didn't pay him. Just whoever I've liked from things. Like I saw something like the other day, someone asked a question, I think it was on Blue Sky or something. Someone asked like, what do you like in fantasy and what would you like to see more of? What's your fantasy trope that you really like? And the one I always kind of like is like the guy looking for the +1 sword, you know, that guy who's always like looking for that holy blade or something, you know? So I probably just like from years of just taking it in, I probably just got to use all that in a way that I thought that helped us produce the best story. I wasn't trying to throw everything I ever had at it. It was something that like if Chris was telling me about something in the story, I could do that and that would really complement this, and then I'd run it by Chris and he'd be like, yeah, sounds great. You know, he was really up for like any kind of like back and forth. And then like our conversation the following week, like, hey, I was thinking about what you said there and we could do this with that. And he's like, oh, brilliant, you know. And then like the following week then like what I had said to him, he would tell me something that vaguely sounded like it, but he had bettered it 10 times because that's what writers do. It was great seeing that kind of stuff unfold, but it was good to hold back on things because Chris isn't a fantasy fan, not his genre at all.
This is his first fantasy story, so I'm glad that you had the genre lexicon to pull from.
Did my best with it because like Chris's fantasy story isn't your high fantasy, maybe like with your magic, like your Brandon Sanderson stuff, where there's like rules for how the magic works, that kind of stuff. Ours is fairly meat and potatoes, but it's definitely fantasy. It has those fantasy tropes that I could possibly put in and run by him, and he ran stuff by me. Then he was like, "What do you think about this?" And like, I mean, his ideas are just great. I mean, you've worked with Chris, so like, I mean, he'll say nothing for a minute and then he'll say something that's the tagline. That's everything.
Oh yeah, it's like, well, why were we all discussing this? We just needed to wait for Sebela to say, "Oh, I got it."
That's just it. Hold my beer.
Moment Ben is referring to is we were on a call thinking about what's the tagline for this book, and everyone's throwing stuff out there and talking, and Chris just kind of looks up in the corner for about 15 seconds, then he goes, "God's dead, who's next?"
Yeah, we just met with silence after that. I was like, no one's going to better that. That's perfect. And he did that like with the story as well. There was some of those Zoom calls we had like where he'd say something and I'd just be like, "Yo, we're just going to do that. That's great." It was a really positive experience, and it was really fun seeing someone who doesn't really like fantasy go into fantasy and how he kind of finds his way around it and picks from things that he likes about fantasy and what he does with them. It was great. And as a fantasy fan, that was one big itch I really got to scratch. I scratched it as hard as I could.
I know you discussed everything, but did you get to sneak anything past him, like little Easter eggs or nods to other things?
So I had a chat with Kyle about this before, and it's like, I don't know how many Easter eggs I really put into this, but as the book went on, in those final few issues, I got a good few in there. Queen of Storms, they're in there. We have Owen, he's climbing one of the ropes to get out of the god. We got you, Dan, you're in there.
I wasn't fishing, but I almost dropped my phone. Ben did something amazing to put a bunch of the Vault team into the final issue. And yeah, I was with my wife at the time and I was like, "You are not going to believe what just fucking happened." I could die happy.
It was one of those things like where like the Vault staff were a lot easier to come up with a caricature that I was hoping for. I was like, "Oh, this is actually going to work out," because I was like, "This is a good idea, but if it looks like shit, I'm not putting it in, and then I won't tell them I've done it."
I mean, it's just a lot of bearded guys for the most part.
There is a lot of bearded guys involved, and like I think like when we first started working on Godfell, your hair wasn't long.
No.
I had to find like a recent haircut for you when I drew that, and like reference on Nate was beard, no beard. I could have got that very wrong, depending on the day of the week. And I got the guys from the Nasty in there as well. They're shouting for help at one point. There's a few Easter eggs of stuff in there, and that page that you mentioned, Kyle, that's heavily inspired by Joe Mad. He did a 3-page backstory for Ryu and Sagat. And one of those moments has just been in my head for years. So I didn't quite do that. I did something similar to it. But even the following panel after that moment is a shot from Ninja Scroll that I'm a big fan of.
Yes.
Oh, that makes sense now.
We talked about page being kind of difficult for time and there's only so much real estate in comics. I would have had maybe 2 panels of that where things are landing at different paces at different periods of time. There's little things like that in there throughout the whole book. I keep throwing my wife into these books I'm drawing, because in the book I'm doing with Dave, my daughter is in it. I haven't my wife yet, but in the Carrie and Rufus book I did, she's a zombie in it. What would you say? Bounty hunter type. Takes care of her and my 2 brothers in about a blink of an eye, Yeah, there'll always be little things like that, but I don't think there's any other kind of Easter eggs from other things I can put in there. I think that was it.
You put everything into this book. I mean, not just in the Easter egg sense, but it seems like you approached this book like you were never going to get to do a comic again.
I might not, right? I mean, I was so long trying to get to do a comic, so...
You can feel it when you hold the book, when you're looking at the pages, you're like, this guy is like, this is my resume now. This is hire me for comics work. This is what I can do. I'm going to show you all my bag of tricks, my character design, my world building skills, my ability to tell a story on the page, gestures, faces, articulation. You absolutely destroyed this book. And I'm so excited for people to be able to sit down and read the whole thing. Go from page 1 to the end of the double-sized finale. I would say you get more comfortable on the page as the series goes on, especially in dynamic character movement. You start just saying, they're doing this now, and it looks amazing. amazing. I'm really excited for people to have that opportunity to see this story sort of beginning to end.
Yeah, me too. Thanks very much. That's really nice of you to say. Again, like, I'm really proud of it. So it's great to hear someone else likes it. You know, that's nice.
We talk about all of our books. We're always, geeking out about what we're working on, and we're proud of everything that we make. But your excitement, okay, this is a public service announcement to other publishers. Don't hire him too much because we want to work with him more, but hire Ben Hennessy. You will not be disappointed. This man crushes deadlines and will leave his heart on the page for you. So hire Ben Hennessy.
That's going on my cover sheet now as well. Dan from Vault said, hire me.
I mean, obviously I want you to do more stuff in Vault, but
oh, same here.
This collected edition, let this be your calling card. Put it in everybody's hands. Be like, I can tell a story. Take a look at this, because they're going to know who you are now. There's a reason we call it the Benaissance. Welcome. This is the time. It's the time.
I love that. I saw you put that hashtag up. I think it was the Vault newsletter, wasn't it? I think one of the lads here, one of my mates, has just been calling me Benaissance since. It's yeah, this is great. Thank you for that.
Of course. I'm always happy to coin a nickname.
I don't know if you can say, but will there be more? Not saying that we need more. The ending was perfect. But could there be more maybe just in the world, not necessarily inside of a god? Because I feel like you designed a whole world and then did it again in the next issue. It's like 2 worlds you made.
I hope so. I've been thinking about that myself, and I have a couple ideas. But yeah, I would love to spend more time in Caratham. I don't think we've even seen how kind of silly and messed up and crazy a cat monkey could be. I think there'll be a time where they do take over the world, and then Zanzi is left at the mercy of these cat monkeys, in which I'd love to spend more time there. I'm really happy with the ending, but I think we could see more of those too as well.
I'll take that too.
I've been so patient and so restrained. I got to ask you a dumb Ireland question.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Tourist recommendations. If you're going to go to Ireland once, what do you got to do?
So I just sent off stuff to a mate. He's traveling from Dublin all around the country, but I was telling if you're not going to Wexford, you're missing out. I live in Wexford. Wexford is if you're kind of looking at Ireland on a map, it's like a big teddy bear.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Wexford's kind of where the bum is, right? The seat is. That's Wexford. There's as southeast as you can possibly be. It's called the sunny southeast. And if you're coming over to Ireland, I kind of find that a lot of Americans like the history here, because there's so much of it. And there's a place here called the Heritage Park, and you can actually go the old Irish crannogs and old dwellings, and they actually do a thing called the Fullocht Fia. It could be the Celts, actually, I think it is, where they used to cook their meat underground on hot stones, that kind of stuff, and cover it up. They actually do all that stuff there. They have people talking about it. They get a huge demo, and they're all in costume. But it's a great thing to do if the Irish history is something you want.
Oh yeah, you're speaking my language.
That's an easy one to pull, and you wouldn't struggle to find that if you were looking around. And there's so many castles to hit as well. It depends on what you're into. If you're kind of into your history, there's another side of things. If there is sport, there's another kind of set of stuff. Are you guys aware of hurling or Gaelic football or anything like that?
Oh, hurling? Yeah, that'd be cool to see.
Hurling's amazing. I think it's the fastest game on grass. So the UK got rights to show hurling over there a number of years ago, and they got to see hurling for the first time. And the stuff I saw on Twitter when they're trying to describe it was amazing. Someone called it somewhere between rugby meets the egg and spoon race. It's actually quite apt, if you know what it is, because kind of like hockey, they have a sliotar, which is kind of like a baseball, as contact as you can believe. It's unbelievable. It's a great game to watch. It's so exciting. So that's worth doing if sports are your jam. And then there's all kinds of stuff like horror tours. Every county seems to have one, haunted castles, all that kind of stuff. There's so much to do. So if you want something specifically, Dan, hit me up.
Here's my hope. We get Vault to Thought Bubble one of these years, and then we do a little Ireland vacay afterwards.
Sounds great. I'll set you up exactly where to go.
What's next from you? What can we expect? What are you working on?
I'm working on a show at the moment that it is a Marvel show. It's it was great to get that. It kind of came out of nowhere, but I can't talk about it because I'm pretty sure the NDA I signed terrifying. I think there's a sniper on the roof over there.
There's a red dot on your forehead. Be careful.
I'm looking at all the shadows in my house, wondering if there's an assassin in there. If I say something, it's a scary one, but I'll be wrapping that up just before I get a top bubble. Then I'll be a top bubble. And then I have a couple of things on the horizon, but nothing nailed down. I'll be hearing about it over the next few days. Working on the odds as well. That's kind of my nights. That's going well, because that's scratching another itch of mine. I love horror, and this is monster horror, post-apocalyptic stuff. I mean, just give me more of this kind of stuff, please. This is great. Fantasy and horror. Yeah, I'm into it.
Go find the Odds Pod anywhere that podcasts are listed, and please subscribe. You should rate it too. It helps.
We have a newsletter too. That's kind of it for me. That's kind of enough. My plate's full.
What, that and 2 children, and one of which is a newborn? You're not busy enough?
Oh God, I know, right? But in fairness, the kids are amazing. In terms of how busy kids can be, mine are very manageable. They're just great. But then I'd have to say that, wouldn't I? Or I'd be the worst dad ever.
We're not a, parenting advice podcast, so I wouldn't ask you to get like real detail and be like, no, Ben, tell me about the hard days. Tell me about, having to change your jumper 3 times.
I mean, they're the worst days, Dan. Like, no one has it as hard as me when I have to change my jumper 3 times in one day. It's just the worst.
Long-suffering Ben Hennessy. Oh, my God. Ben, I just want to say thank you for coming by and being your wonderful self. There will be a pre-order link on Vault's website to get the complete edition of Godfell, and we're going to have a little discount code for you. You probably just heard it a little bit ago. Don't skip the ad. That's how you get the discount.
You want all the juicy stuff. Yeah, those ads are good.
Exactly.
I watched the first episode today, guys. It was great. I like how you slip in the ads in there. It's like, that actually works. This is great. It's not like a weird YouTube thing coming in and disrupting the whole flow. Everything just goes really well. Props to you, Kyle. Is that you?
That is 1000% Kyle.
Try.
You succeed. Ben, thank you for everything. I hope we have you back again sometime. I'm thinking we might need to do like an animation roundtable at some point.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, animators in comics.
There's a lot of them.
That'd be fun. Kyle. I can't wait to have Ben back on the show. What a delight.
My favorite person.
Yeah, he's pretty swell. And so our next guests, Mike Marisi and Nicholas Ames, are going to be on the show. So come back in 2 weeks so we can talk about Barbaric Wrong Kind of Righteous, along with Kings of the Wild, Nicholas's amazing novel, and talk movies with Mike. He's been directing. It's going to be a great time. So don't miss it. We'll see you in 2 weeks. But until then, the Vaultcast is produced by the illustrious Kyle Foucher and the tolerable Daniel Crary. Social media support by Britta Bisher. Logo design by Tim Daniels. The Vaultcast is a copyrighted production of Vault Comics. Copyright 2023.